Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the Panasonic S1. We've got some stuff here on the table and we're going to be building a Panasonic S1, maybe documentary style run and gun rig. So my goal for this build, and I do this for most of these guides for each of these cameras, is to figure out something that the majority of people could use and it improves upon the camera. And each camera is different. So some cameras need more than others. Some need different things. This camera, what it has going for it is amazing battery life. So unlike most of the builds, we don't need to add more power to this thing. It's a beast. It's beautiful how long the battery lasts. Autofocus isn't really that good, so that's kind of a concern. But the stabilization is great, so we don't really have to build up a monstrous rig. So I'm thinking of something very small you could fit in a small bag, be able to film, maybe on the subway, kind of run and gun, and easily be able to remove the camera if necessary. So we're gonna go ahead and start building it now. I will have below this video a link to a blog post with all the parts. So if you wanna check all that out, you can do so. On this side of the table, we have the necessary stuff. And then on this side, on the other side of the camera, is a bunch of stuff that I think is, optional that would drastically improve, but not really necessary. So let's go ahead and begin with a camera cage. This is the small rig cage for the Panasonic S1. You can go with other cages, but the most important part of this build is going to be these threads right here at the top. So let's go ahead and throw the camera in here. What's cool about small rig cages, or at least their more recent ones, is on the bottom of the cage, there's actually a little tightener for the actual screw here. So I'm just gonna grab the camera. Another thing I love about this particular cage is that you don't have to take the lens off, which a lot of cages you have to. And I'm just gonna kind of flip things over, line up the pin, start hand threading it in, grab my little magnetic tightener here. I'll go ahead and snug it up. Something like that. Replace this back in its little magnetic spot. And just like that, we've got the cage all mounted in the camera. It's got a really nice machined kind of angle here, so it doesn't really interfere with the amazing grip of the Panasonic S1. So the next step is going to be adding this guy right here. This is a 15mm rod clamp. You'll notice that it has threads across the top as well as threads on the front. And it also comes with a bunch of different bolts, screws, and whatnot. And what's cool about this is not only can you thread stuff into this, but there's also taps here or holes that are drilled where these bolts can go through them. So I can actually run this bolt through or thread it in. So I've got different options. So what we're doing here is we're taking the longer of the bolts that come with it. We're running it through the face. So you can see they're coming out the other side there. And we're going to take our camera, we're gonna bolt this thing right to the front, just like that. So let me go ahead and do that now, and we'll be back in just a jiff. Okay, so at this point, as you can see, we have that guy bolted to the front of the cage. It kind of makes the top of the cage even, sticking out more over the lens, and we're able to add a 15mm rod. And the reason we need 15mm rods on the front of this thing is because we're gonna be using a wireless follow focus system. So this is the Tilta Nucleus Nano. It consists of a single motor that attaches via 15mm rods and one of these focusing knobs that has a battery built in. On some cameras you can stop and start, doesn't really work for the S1 yet. And these are paired wirelessly. And you would not believe how amazing this is to own if you have any manual lenses at all. So it's incredible. Like, moral of the story is it's $229. I bought one, I'm probably gonna buy more because they're really amazing. So I'm gonna set the controller knob aside for now. And we're going to bring our camera back and we're going to mount this puppy to our rig. Obviously, this system works on lenses that have geared rings like this one here. See that ring right there? So you'll need to add rings to your lenses. It comes with one that kind of snaps on. It's not the greatest, so you might want to upgrade that. So to do this, to mount it, we're going to need this guy. This is a 2.5-inch 15mm rod. I think it's perfect for compact setups like this. You could also go with a 4-inch, maybe pick that up on the side. It's got threads on either end, so I'm going to throw that on this particular hole here on our clamp. Let me loosen it up. Drop it in place. Snug it up. Right here, these are ratcheting knobs, so I can pull it, kind of tuck it out of the way like that. Next, I'm going to grab my motor here. I'm going to throw it on and line it up with my gears. So if I tilt things over, it's kind of a rough angle, but you can see it's engaging with the ring of the lens. You might be able to hear that. So I don't want to like really push it in there. I want it to be just kind of resting in one of those grooves, and I'll tighten it up. There we go. So at this point, we've got our motor mounted, and again, compactness. Look at this thing. It's amazing. Really nice and compact. So I'm going to set this down. We're going to now add the controller. Now, you could stick with the stock controller here, the knob, but I think this is a much cooler, much more sleek, much more usable option. So before we get to this thing, which is essentially a handle with a grip wheel here for focusing, let's talk about this knob. It comes with a quick release system, and if you are going to use it, I would recommend mounting it right here. So this would be your final setup. As you're shooting, you can, very easily with one finger change your focus. It does work, and you can remove it if you want to step back, and be away from the camera and change your focus. But since, for the most part, we're going to be, using this in a handheld configuration, I think this guy right here is the way to go. Now, what is it? We've got a handle here. It actually has a battery in it. And what that does is allows us to run power from the grip to this motor. Unfortunately, this little motor right here requires 5 volts of power, and there's no built-in battery. So you would have to run, add another battery to this whole setup. Would be a big pain in the butt. And this guy here doesn't really supply power to it, and it has its own rechargeable battery. So that's just batteries on batteries on batteries. So to reduce everything, I'm thinking this guy right here is a great way to go. You can get it where it takes Sony MPF batteries like this one that I have right here, or you can get it with Canon LPE6 batteries. So it's really your choice. I like these ones because it matches monitors, which we'll talk about here in a second. Now, this thing can mount to anything via this Airy style rosette. So there's a little red knob here that tightens down onto a rosette. So we need a way to mount this to this side of our cage. To do that, I found this little gem, which is a small Airy rosette with 2 bolts here. So we can go ahead and mount this to our cage. I would recommend mounting it right about here. So not all the way down at the bottom of the cage, but not super high up. That'll give us clearance for this grip here so that we can still remove the battery. So I'm gonna grab my Allen key. I'll go ahead and throw this on real quick. Okay, at this point, we are ready for our battery grip. So I'm just simply gonna thread it on. I'm gonna interlock the teeth. It's kind of a pain to do for the first time. Nice and snug, and there we have it. I like to lean mine a little bit forward, so it's, as you can see there, it's not perfectly perpendicular, and this right here feels really, really comfortable. So to connect this guy to our motor, we're going to need the cable. It is micro USB to micro USB, and it actually comes with the original Tilta kit. So we're gonna set the side controller over here, and the way we're gonna do this is plug it first into the controller grip. Then I'm gonna do a little cable management here, pull this back. Next, we'll take our cable and plug it into our controller, or motor that is, and then I'm gonna take the excess cable and kind of tuck it back in here like so. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to rock and roll with our focus. To turn this thing on, all you have to do is press and hold this power button here, and you'll see a green light show up. There's the green light there. You can also see that our motor is turned on, the little OLED there. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is that this module here, the actual grip, has no way to communicate wirelessly with this guy. There's also no way to program this to work with lenses that don't have hard stops. So if you have a lens and the focus ring spins infinitely, and it doesn't have any resistance, then this won't work. It'll just keep spinning when you try to calibrate it. So I have a lens that has hard stops. It stops on either end of the focus range. Now this will most likely work with lenses that kind of have some resistance on the other end. So some Canon lenses, once you reach infinity, it keeps spinning, but you feel like some friction. This will sometimes work with lenses like that, but something to keep in mind. Again, I'm building a little mini Doc Cine setup, and I don't care about autofocus, and I'm using manual lenses. So this is gonna work fine. Again, if you want to, you can still use the actual focus wheel. This will allow you to program those lenses, but you'll have to manage, another battery for this guy. So with it on, right around where your thumb is, right back here, there's a calibrate button. So I'm gonna go ahead and press and hold that, and you can see the motor and the lens will start to spin here. Let me get a good lighting angle for you guys, something like that. So here we go, I'm pressing and holding. And there it goes, it's starting to spin. There it hit the end, it's coming back the other way. And there we go. And at this point, now that the lens is calibrated, I can simply, I'll do it real slow so you can see, I'm just changing my focus. It's that easy. So as you're running around, this is it. And I love this setup. You can simply change your focus, that easy. And it is a small focus little wheel here, but it's very well dampened. So even like minute changes can be easily registered. And this thing is rock solid. I would not have any problems, swinging this around. You've got the area rosette, so you double, security there. So a great setup. This is kind of our base. And the beauty is, if you're going to remove the camera, all you have to do is loosen up this right here, this here, little whatever, I can't talk, this thumb screw, this tab, and then you pull the motor away, take the one bolt out of the bottom of the camera, and your camera slides right out. So we're gonna move on and talk about top handles. Originally when I did this kind of build, I had, NATO rails and all kinds of stuff, but to keep things simple, we're going with this guy. This is a really, really nice handle by Small Rig. This isn't sponsored, by the way. Purchased all this stuff, no communication with Small Rig to this day. And essentially what's cool about this top handle is it has airy locking pins. So I don't know if you can see that, but there's a 3/8 thread here, and then there's two little baby pins you can see on those little silver nubs. And what this allows us to do is have a single thread that goes into the camera, but these pins will go into pins on the camera and it'll keep it from spinning around. Oops. So if I tilt this up here and you look at the top of this rig, you'll notice this one spot right here where we have kind of a big 3/8 thread and then those four little holes there. That's what interfaces with this guy here. So you can put it in like this, you can put it in like this, you can put it in like this, whatever your heart desires. I'm gonna use it like this. So let me go ahead and thread this in here. And what's cool about this guy here, let me tilt it this way. You might be able to see there's actually holes drilled sideways into this silver tightening knob. And on the other side of this handle, there is a magnetic, again, a little tool here, a little, come on buddy, there we go, a little Allen key that will fit perfectly into this thing. So I don't know if you can see that, but I've threaded the Allen key in this tightening knob, and now I can use it like a wrench and really get it nice and tight. Then when I'm done with it, I can simply put it back in. It's a little magnetic spot, and we're good to go. So now we've got a really rockin' top handle. This guy is ready to roll all kinds of different ways that we can use it on the go. Our little cable has escaped here. Let me put him back. And at this point, we're going to talk about monitors. Now, this is an optional one, but it really does help add a little more weight. I'm a fan of manageable smart weight when it comes to rigs like this. So you could add a monitor and then an HDMI, and that's going to add some complexity, but it makes a huge difference if you're going to be running around handheld. So Ninja 5 obviously is a great choice. The Atom Shinobi would also work well. And then here I have that Andy Cine. It's kind of like my favorite budget recommendation. So Either one would work great. Just for kicks and giggles, we're gonna go with the Ninja 5, and I'm going to use this guy here, which is a small rig, friction-based monitor mount. So you'll see how it works here in a second. But first and foremost, I'm gonna thread it onto my monitor on the bottom. Get nice and tight. A little too tight. There we go. Okay, so that's ready to go. And now, where to mount this? You might be asking yourself. Well, there's a ton of different places you can do it on this rig, so I'm just gonna show them to you now. You could mount it into the logical first place you might think, which is right up here. Nice place to put it, right? Or you can loosen it. By the way, there's a little locking quick release there, so it keeps it from sliding out. Or you could put it back here like that. It's another nice little place. If you want to keep this whole thing snug right up against your chest, you could drop this way down. Or if you're getting a real low shot, you could put it back here. And then just in the menus, flip it to be upside down. So there's a lot of different ways that you could mount this thing, which I love. So for now, I'm gonna throw it on the front. Nice satisfying click. Again, all these tightening points have little holes, so I can throw an Allen key in there and really snug it up if I want. And that just feels amazing. The weight is just about right. You can see as I move it around, it's just got that nice, like, that weight, so it's not gonna mess around. Unfortunately, this thing wants to tip forward, so for now, I'm gonna just put the monitor back. And we'll throw an HDMI cable on it. Anyone will do, preferably an HDMI 2.0. And we'll also go ahead and use this little guy. Kind of a small piece, but this is a HDMI cable lock. And in short, we can bolt it to the side of our cage, tighten it up, and it'll lock onto the HDMI so it won't be slipping around. And that mounts right here. Yep, right there, those two little screws. So an optional item. For now, I'm going to exclude it, but if you're gonna run like this with a monitor all the time, that would be a great one to go with. So at this point, all that remains to do is to plug this puppy in, flip open the door on the camera, plug it in, little cable management, and we are good to go. So this is my Panasonic S1 rig. Again, monitor is optional, but I really do think this focusing system is just brilliant. Being able to keep your hands on the camera, keep the camera steady, the way everything's rock solid thanks to that small rig gear and the way Tilted designed this handle. So I have really enjoyed using this guy. Now, some of you might be asking about power for longer runs. The S1 does a great job, but if you are gonna be on sticks for a long period of time, we're now just starting to see Panasonic and others come out with power solutions that plug into the wall. So you can find those on B&H and Amazon if you're looking for something like that. And that is gonna do it for this video on rigging up your Panasonic S1. Hopefully you picked up a thing or two. Again, links to all this stuff will be on that next page. I'll have a single blog post, which is listing everything out in order of appearance to make things a little easier for you. And hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.